Are you ready for phenomenal thought leadership from the most well-respected leaders in industry? Join us for stellar conversations and sound advice from trailblazers who have a passion for excellence. Learn best practices that will catapult the culture of your company into a new level of greatness. Welcome to Great Companies, Great Leaders. Your host is Christine Gannon. Welcome to another edition of Great Companies, Great Leaders. I am super honored and excited to have our guest today, Jason Haines, who is the owner of Industrial Solutions. Jason, welcome.
Hey, how you guys doing today?
So we're going to kick off with a little bit about who you are so that our guests and leaders that are listening know how to contact you and why they would contact you, and a little bit about who you are. So Jason has worked in the manufacturing industry for over 20 years in multiple roles, starting on the production floor, working all the way up to leadership. He was introduced to lean leadership early in his career while a machine operator at a small Ohio factory. Go Buckeyes, where the concept was implemented on a daily basis with all facets of the organization. He continued using lean and the lean concepts in the steel industry, where he used his experience to help line production, increase in efficiency, and lessen waste in the production process. While working in the steel industry, Jason actually got to learn about what it means to be a servant leader, as well as going to the Gemba, which I want to talk about with you, to see what was actually going on and where the work is done. He gained a lot of experience, learned how to build relationships and help people grow as well as succeed at their job, which is what all great leaders do. Jason moved to Arizona and became the production supervisor with a metal manufacturer and continued to learn how to guide and grow his people through servant leadership and respect for people. He then moved on to Essential Oils, which totally cool, Essential Oils bottling facility. And this is where he garnered a strong passion for lean leadership, really helping companies and their processes become more efficient and help drive waste reduction through lean practices. And using these practices, he was able to build a team that would become future leaders and ambassadors of the company and create a respect for people through servant leadership. So Jason, so glad to have you here today. What is Gemba?
It's actually pronounced Gemba.
Okay.
It's Japanese for actually, it means go to where the work's being done. So it's just to go out and see what's being done within the facility, making sure you're not jumping to conclusions as far as when you're making decisions for what's going on within your facility and within the processes, and making sure you're making the right decision based on what you see at the Gemba.
So instead of sitting in a boardroom or in a meeting, you actually go and you observe what's happening.
Yeah.
I love it.
Go out and observe the things that are going on within the facility.
That's awesome. Okay, I hadn't heard of that before. That's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about leadership today. What do you think some of the biggest challenges are facing leaders?
I think that's one of the biggest challenges is with going to the Gemba, is a lot of people get into leadership and they want to do a great job and everything, but a lot of times, and I made this mistake when I first started out, as far as going in and the leadership and taking on all the things that you can and never saying no to anything. So one of the biggest challenges I think everybody has is really not saying, or they're afraid to say no when they first get into leadership. And they don't want to step on any toes of the people that are their bosses or their mentors or their leaders. So they try to say yes to everything that's going on there, and they forget about the people that are beneath them as far as serving them. And that's, like I said, I made that mistake myself when I first went into leadership, and I had to learn through the processes of learning how to go to the Gemba and learning how to go to where the work's done and helping the people out and learning their jobs in order to make their jobs easier. Because when you make their jobs easier, your job actually gets easier.
100%.
Yeah. And I guess that was the other thing is also when you first start into leadership, you're super busy all the time. And a big thing or a big challenge I think that other leaders have is being too busy and not having enough time to go out there. So one of the things I always tell people that go into leadership or are in leadership is to eliminate the things from your job, because you can't help other people out unless you become less busy in the job that you're doing. You're not going to serve others in order to go through that whole process. I actually heard John Gordon John Gordon had a podcast here a couple weeks ago that was talking with a guy that said the same thing. When he first went into leadership, got super busy, said yes to everything, and couldn't serve his people, and he had to step back for a couple of years in order to learn how to prioritize everything.
I think that is a big challenge for new leaders. And part of that is too the mind shift that has to change in terms of I'm no longer a worker, I'm actually the leader. And that's a whole different mindset.
Yes.
And what I say yes to and what I say no to, they're two very different roles. And I think making that transition is difficult sometimes.
Yeah. And I think as well, going off of your point, I always say I'm hands-on, but when I mean hands-on, I'm not saying I'm doing the job for the people. I'm more hands-on as far as I'm going out to see what they need, helping them out, making sure that I'm serving them at as best as I can, rather than doing the job for them. And if they need help as far as coaching, then I try to coach them through the process and teach them what they need to understand, rather than trying to do the job for them. Because I've had managers do that to me, where they come out, they show you how to do it, but they don't let you do it within the process. And that's usually what I try to do, is show them how to do it, let them go through the process, and make sure that they understand what's going on and everything. So like I said, when I say hands-on, I don't mean I'm going to jump in there and do the job for you.
No, thank goodness, because I don't think great leaders do that. Great leaders really, let's teach people how to fish so they can go do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Exactly.
we have no time to lead.
Yep.
So, what do you think? And you may have said this, but is there anything else you think that really derails leaders' careers? Are there things that they do that can derail them?
I think there's many things. Like I said before, I think two of the big things is saying yes to too many things and not knowing when to say no, and not prioritizing. And so that's one of the big things. And then one of the big things I think that derails a lot of their careers is just being too busy to be able to help their people out. They get too busy. Their employees get frustrated. They get frustrated. Both parties get stressed out. You have high employee turnover. Just things that don't help your organization out, as far as and when you're too busy and not able to help people out, it like I said, it frustrates both parties.
The other thing too is if you're so busy, when do you have time to lead and think strategically and create vision and be a leader? I mean, there's
Yes.
limited time for that, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So what do you think some of the best things on the flip side of derailing? What do you think are some of the best things leaders can do for themselves and their team?
I think one of the best things, and what I've experienced as far as through my experience over the years, is what we call in lean management is going to the Gemba, going out to where the work's done to see what's going on. Also, when you're going out to see what's going on, you're also out there and able to see who your future leaders, your future ambassadors of your organization are. You're able to build relationships. Your people start to get to know you more. I'm not saying become super familiar, as far as you're not going out to, as they say, not going out to beers with them after work, but you're going to go out there and build relationships. So it makes them more comfortable through communication. People are able to talk to each other. People are able to bounce ideas off of each other. They're not scared to talk to each other. And a lot of times I think that's what leadership runs into, is they're not used to going out and communicating with the people doing the work at the front line. So they're not as familiar with the people, and the people at the front line are afraid to come to them and say anything, because they haven't built that relationship or that repertoire of talking to each other and helping each other out and communicating.
That's so true, because I think as a leader, I really want to know what's going on the front line, because I want to I mean, this is your whole history, right? I want to make improvements. I want to reduce waste. I want to improve processes. I don't know that I really have that knowledge and know-how if the frontline workers or middle management doesn't have a comfort level to come and share that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's on all levels, as far as just trying to get to know your people and then understanding them, and also them understanding you, because a lot of times we're saying the same thing, but we're usually cross talking because we might have a different language as far as how we're communicating.
That's so true. And I think, another thing that that open communication and relationship does is it opens up the door for creative thinking, where people feel more free to share
Mhm.
their creative ideas. Would you agree?
Yes, I would fully agree with that. As far as once you get to where you've built that relationship, more people share ideas and they're more apt. So I started, like I said, on the floor within manufacturing. They're more apt to tell you the problems they're having when if you're giving them breaks or anything like that. They're more apt to tell you the problems they're having with the machines that they're working on, rather than you just give them a break, they take off and they don't tell you anything, and you find out the problem after they've left, and then you say something to them and they're like, oh yeah, I've been having that problem all night, and they're more apt to tell you about the problems that they're having.
The relationship is so key, isn't it, for
Mhm.
leaders?
Yeah.
It really is.
Yep.
Where do you think the great ideas from the organization come from?
I think I think they come from the employees on the floor a lot of times, and I think where the disconnect comes from a lot of times is a lot of times the employees on the floor have the great ideas, but they don't know who to go to. And as I was
Mm,
saying before, a lot of times it's because there was no communication between the leadership and the managers. I heard it the other day. Somebody made it, said a quote or was talking to me about it. And a lot of times the people on the floor, they have good ideas, but they just don't know who to go to. And a
yeah.
lot of times the people in the leadership roles, they are able to make those changes when they get the ideas, but they don't know who to go to, and neither side wants to rock the boat, so they don't try to unless there's a strong leader there that's trying to communicate with everybody and open up those streams of communication. And a lot of times, I don't think changes start to come until somebody opens up the lines of communication between the two groups.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So you have leaders, let's say they've created this amazing environment, they have open communication, the relationships are good. In terms of growth for leaders, what are some resources you would recommend for someone who wants to improve their leadership style?
Uh, Nowadays, podcast is a big thing. I've I'm a podcast person. I probably listen to too many podcasts, to be honest with you. But I do a lot of walking, driving. Usually, when I'm driving to and from different places, I listen to podcasts. I'm not. My wife's a big music person. I'm a big listen to people talk kind of person. Grew up watching sports, so talk radio is one of the big things in sports. Uh,
Right.
Books, and if I was talking to a younger me, I would have told myself to read more when I was younger, because of a lot of times the books that I've read and picked up, and I'm not just talking books that you want to read, but pick up a book here and there that maybe a different concept from what you're used to, because you get ideas from different people. I mean, I've picked up books one I actually just read was the coddling of the American mind, that talks about the psychology of what's going on in colleges and high schools and different places right now, and just gives you different ideas of how to communicate with different people, because start to understand just the different ways people think. And then lastly, I think getting a mentor is a big thing. It's
Mentor.
finding somebody that'll mentor you through the the ups and downs of your whole leadership process. And that's probably one that I probably didn't do the best job of getting, because when I was growing up, I was always kind of backwards, or an introvert, you might as well say. I'm not introverted as well as far as I'd like to talk to people. It was hard for me to ask people to help me out.
Sure.
So
Sure. I think mentoring is beyond important. I don't
yeah,
know any successful leader that has gained that success without mentors,
yes,
um, because they also point out your blind spots. So, you're running in your lane and you don't always see everything that you might need to see. And I
yeah,
feel like mentors do a great job where there's a feeling of trust and safety. They can point out those blind spots, and they can also share with you, if they're further along in their career, the pitfalls and things that they've learned.
yeah, exactly. And even to go back on my point, as far as the mentorship, in a sense, sometimes if you can't find a mentor, find books of people that what do they call it, you like, as far as like
Yeah,
coaches or the leaders of
sure.
certain companies, and read their books. And sometimes even though you're not physically talking to them, sometimes you'll get ideas from reading those books as far as what they've done in the past and everything.
Absolutely. A few of mine. Jim Rohn is amazing,
Yeah. Yep.
ROHN. Really like him a lot.
Yes.
Brendan Bouchard is amazing, phenomenal leader about just personal development and growth. So many, there's just so many that,
Okay.
and I think it changes too, depending on where you're
Yep.
at in your leadership journey, who might really appeal to you at the beginning of your leadership journey versus, middle or maybe the end of your career. I think it's different. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Yes, I would totally agree, because it just depends on where you're at, what you're looking to achieve, and you start to get different ideas, and you change your mindset as far as as far as where you're going, and with different types of things. Because sometimes you get stuck in a mindset, and then you read something, or you hear something from somebody, or you hear something from a mentor, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now, and your mindset kind of changes. It's just one of those things where I feel like not only do you want to try to help your people improve, you're also improving yourself. And as we was talking, like the servant leadership, to me, you're serving other people, not just to change them, you're also changing yourself as far as your thought patterns and your mindset and everything throughout the whole process, because there's just different ways of doing things, and people from different facets of life have different ideas, and you learn from that. And maybe your idea is the best, but that's the one you're using right now, until you see something that may improve that whole process of your thought.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about podcasts. I mean, sometimes technology is a blessing and sometimes it's a
Mhm.
curse for me, honestly, but
Yeah.
mostly a blessing. But we live in the most amazing time. We can listen to podcasts wherever we are 24/7. We
Yep.
can gain knowledge and we can listen to someone else's perspective, like we're doing today. So
Yes.
I
Yep.
think podcasts are amazing.
Yep. Yes.
So talk to me a little bit. You mentioned it at the beginning, but talk to me a little bit more about what advice you might give to a new leader. When you think back to stepping into one of those first roles that you had, what do you wish you would have known?
Two things, well, three things actually. I wish I would have known. One, first, read. I think reading helps out a lot. I come from an area in Ohio that was very out in the middle of nowhere. Being the reading was one of those things you didn't do, because if you read, you wasn't a tough guy. So it was, you kind of, all books or whatever. And now I'm just like, reading has actually helped tremendously, as far as not just learning leadership processes, but also my vocabulary, changing my thought process, and just how to do different things throughout the world per se. Uh,
Sure.
Second is, if you go into leadership, one, first, be patient, and second, when you get into leadership, don't do like I did and say yes to everything and try to do everything for everybody. Try to figure out what you need to do throughout your day. Prioritize. Make sure that you're being available for the people when they need you to be available, and not having to worry about different things at different times. I think, like I said earlier, I think one of the big things, you go into a job and you want to do well, but a lot of times we don't prioritize right off the bat. We get too busy, and we're constantly thinking about stuff that we need to get done, and we're not present with the person that we're trying to help out.
Right. And if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, right?
Exactly. I actually worked for the facility. We asked, what's the priority? And they said, oh, well, everything's a priority. And we're like, well, that can't be.
Right? The nothing is. It
Yes.
can't all be P1. So Jason, as we wrap up, you've given some tremendous nuggets. Thank you. As we wrap up, tell me a couple things. One, what are you doing to ensure you continue to grow and develop as a leader? I know you said podcasts and reading. Is there anything else that, like, to go to conferences, or is there anything else that you do?
I am starting to go to conferences more, because they're finally opening up
Right.
Thank goodness. As far as that goes, last year was kind of a slow year for myself. As far as we like to be in person, and it kind of slowed down, way down. I actually formed a group called the AMSA, or the Arizona Manufacturing Suppliers the Association, that we've been getting together once a month. It's suppliers of manufacturers here in the Valley, because the way manufacturing has actually grown here over the past 2 to 3 years, and just being part of that, and getting people's ideas on how to get into different facilities and talk with different manufacturers. And then lastly with the AZMEP, or the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, working with them and being part of that whole process. It just being able to brainstorm with different people from the like industry and everything, and just being able to be with those type of people.
No, that makes sense. Surrounding yourself with maybe like-minded or not so like-minded people,
Yep.
but people who have the same interest to grow and develop and become a better leader.
Yes. Yep.
So Jason, where can people find you if they're interested to learn more?
If they're interested to learn more, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. I'm more of a LinkedIn person than the Facebook or the Instagram. Instagram's more personal. I like pictures, but I'm more of it's more my personal page. Like I said, on LinkedIn, or you can find our company at industry or isiworld.net.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. You left our audience with some tremendous information, and it was great to have you.
I thank you. And thank you for having me as well, Christine.
Brightworks Consulting hosts this podcast and YouTube channel to spotlight the leadership around the world that is changing lives. Brightworks offers a myriad of consulting services in the public and private sector, to include diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions for any size company. You can find us at www.brightworksconsulting.com. We're honored to have Best Companies AZ as a presenting sponsor for this podcast. Best Companies AZ is your #1 source for regional employer branding. You can find them at www.bestcompaniesaz.com.